Mhm. All right, we're on.
All right, I will call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to our trustee meeting. Today is Monday, December 21st, 2020. Ms. Kraft, if you could please call roll.
Sure. Mr. Rivers?
Here.
Mr. Grumbles?
Here.
Ms. Taranto?
Here.
All right, do we have any agenda changes this evening?
I do, if I could slip one in.
Sure.
I'm sorry for the last minute on this one. I sent an email and we did add it to the template here in case you guys approve it. But we spent the last couple days trying to gather all the remaining COVID expenses to understand what's still outstanding and what we've spent to figure out how much we have left over that we can allocate to salaries. So I did ask for an appropriation change under the fiscal report. And you'll see the detail when we get to my report. You guys can decide if you want to talk about it tonight, or if not, then we just either have to have another meeting to allocate it, or we just don't allocate it and we don't use all the federal money. It's kind of whatever we want to do.
All right, do we have any other changes? And I will add Brooks Vogel of Corda will be joining us this evening in our discussion regards to our parks. All right, so our first item is our consent agenda. Do we have any questions, comments on the consent agenda? Take that as no. All right, I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda, resolution 20-403, resolution 20-404.
Second.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Taranto?
Yes.
I had one question. I didn't get unmuted in time, but it wouldn't have changed my vote. I wanted to get an update on the Dude Solutions from Andrew and just find out, for the sake of the entire board hearing and the public, what our status is there. I know they've been doing quite a bit of work.
Bill might be able to jump in here. So where we were at, I know before Thanksgiving, was we had gotten the information from the Alpha Group. They came out, I want to say mid to late September. It took a little bit for us to get the information. So I believe all that's now been uploaded. So I know there was a couple of emails I've gotten from them recently wanting to like restart some of the training and rollout stuff. So I think it's ready to sort of get it to the next step. I know, Bill, we were looking at moving to Dude Solutions, and I think this came up in the last meeting, and forgive me if I'm misremembering, for the fleet management, because it was cheaper than continuing with iWorks. So I know that was another thing that we talked to them about. So Bill, am I forgetting anything? Like I said, I know I've seen a few emails pop up this week, or last week, but I don't remember.
No, I think you're right on. The fleet management program, that was kind of an add-on that we requested, again, because of the pricing. And we're in that, going to hopefully soon do the training for our mechanic of how to do that. But I think otherwise, I think you're right on with your explanation.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to our zoning report. Ms. Bonnie.
Okay, great. Thank you. So tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., the Board of Trustees will be having its first Route 23 overlay hearing. That evening, we only have one application, and it is the applicant is Schottenstein, and they are requesting approval of a site layout development plan for the multifamily apartments known as the Orange Grand Estates off of Home Road. Following that, on Thursday, January 21st at 6 p.m., the Board of Zoning Appeals will have three applications. The first one is over on 7526 Hillgale Court, and they are requesting a variance to install a pool and a deck over in the Wilshire subdivision. The second one is a conditional use application. This is for a model home application for the new one of our newer subdivisions, the Grand Point at North Orange off of Harness Way. And the last application is a variance and conditional use combination for the signage over at Life Point Church. And the last thing I have on the zoning report this evening is for Tuesday, January 26th at 7 p.m. This will be the second zoning commission hearing for application number zone-20-03, and that is for a single family amendment over at the Slate Ridge single family district. And that is all I have for the zoning report. Thank you.
Hey, Michelle, I got a question on this one. I was just taking a look at our public postings and keeping up, seeing where we're at. And I noticed there were some comments on the Kerbler Schottenstein project. And I just wanted to verify. I recall that all of that with Schottenstein was baked into like the whole Kerbler project and part of the home road, and the entire zoning for that was kind of previously worked into a separate package. Is that not correct?
So Schottenstein essentially took out two chunks over the Kerbler Farm development. So they have the Orange Grand Apartments on the south side of Home Road, and then they're proposing the Orange Grand Estates on the north side of Home Road tomorrow evening. This application on Tuesday the 26th is the remaining area of the Slate Ridge single family district. And that is—
So it's in addition to what they have already got.
Well, the Slate Ridge development was approved back in 2013 for single family homes, but they are amending that district.
That's okay. So that's what
nothing's been nothing's been built in this area yet.
Okay. So I guess I misunderstood. I thought when we looked at Home Road before my term, I thought part of the big TIF package and everything with the Home Road development and the overpass and all of that was worked out with Schottenstein as a partner, and this development was part of that discussion. Am I mistaken?
I'd have to look at the details. I know the Kerbler family was involved with that to some extent. I mean, they also have a commercial component in this district, in this area too.
I recall that as well, but I did recall there being multifamily. I believe there was even age restricted or retirement.
So the Orange Grand Estates for tomorrow evening was that planned elderly residential district. They are changing that development to just have multifamily housing and no age restriction.
Okay, but similar as far as the construction and everything.
Oh yeah, the layout is very similar. Just taking the restriction off of it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
All right, thank you. Maintenance report, Mr. Cowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a note on there for a roundabout discussion. I think
I put that on there.
Trustee Tranto placed. Okay, yep.
I had been working with, I had some residents, two different residents approached me regarding, one of them saw the children almost get hit, and the other one was the parent of children who almost got hit by cars coming through the roundabout. And I went over and took a look at it, talked to Rob Riley, who also went over and looked at it and said, yes, that there definitely was some concerns. Bill and I were in communication, and he was assisting me talking with the engineer's office. We have a beautiful, the tree growth in the middle of that roundabout, which absolutely serves a purpose. It keeps cars from flying through, literally straight through the roundabout. It causes drivers to slow down because of all the growth in the middle of the roundabout. And but in this instance, the growth is so great and significant that you can't see through the roundabout as you're approaching it to see that children are crossing the street, this is the roundabout that is right in front of Orange Middle School. So Rob Riley had gone out and watched it and said absolutely there was a concern there. And they had made some suggestions of some flashing lights and or trimming the trees. And obviously trimming the trees would be much cheaper and could easily solve the problem. I think it kind of got put on hold. I understand that some other people were going to go out and observe it. I don't know if that happened, but this is one of those things that is an easy fix. It can happen. We can take care of a serious issue quickly. So I'd like us to be able to move forward with that tree trimming as soon as possible. And it is something that I was going to add to the agenda, but we were gathering the information first, and then I kind of heard that things were put on hold. So I'd like to move forward on that. Anytime there's a safety issue and we can work quickly to absolve it, I think that's something that's important that we all follow up on.
Yeah, so I know Bill, myself, and Andrew, and
Aaron.
James were going to go over, and I think Aaron got quarantined. Is that correct, Bill?
That's what, yes.
We've all gotten these random quarantines from 3 touches away, and it's just been tough to get everybody out there. I actually went over and drove both of the roundabouts on Orange Road following the complaint, and I did it again this past week. And Bill, apologies for not calling. I went over the weekend, both directions I went through just to take a look. And I do see what the concern is with I think they're evergreens of some sort, but they're pretty, like pine trees or something. They're pretty big. And my initial thought was, my gosh, how fast are people going through the thing? Because the idea of a roundabout is you have to look left before you enter the intersection anyway. The problem with that is while you're looking left and you're drifting right, you could have kids coming into the intersection, and I kind of stopped and went through it again, just looking at that, and you get there pretty quick. Because of the school and how many neighborhoods are there, I'm in agreement. I've seen a child lose the battle to a car, and it's not something I ever wish to happen again. And so I agree. I would go so far as to say, because of the type of tree, I'm not sure that trimming it's an option, to be honest. I mean, I would look at that if I were in landscaping and cut it off at the middle and take the top, and that's the tree lighting ceremony when we're out of COVID, or, how do you go about it? Because the base of it's always going to be a problem. And if you cut the base out, it's just going to look ridiculous. I would almost say, find an alternative. Landscaping, put some roses or some bushes or some low maintenance, boxwoods or something like that are green all year round and not as restrictive on site. I do know that this concern was shared too on some of the newer roundabouts that we're doing with arborvitaes, I think, and other evergreen type trees. I don't think people realize how big arborvitaes get. They get massive. So just something to keep in mind too, Andrew and Bill, as we continue to construct these in the county. I know we've got some on Green Meadows we're working on landscaping and that kind of thing. You may want to be mindful of line of sight in all of them, even if there's not a school nearby, just because we're increasing our trails and crossings. But this one I think is a fair call out, and we owe it to the residents to get after it as soon as possible.
We could probably replace it with a smaller tree, a Chinese red maple or something. But I suggest we just cut it down now, and then Bill, maybe look at that in the spring and see if there's something else you'd like to put there. I think there's enough there to still slow down traffic approaching the roundabout.
Looked like there were some rock, pretty substantial. I would hope that nobody would drive through that. If they did, they'd be replacing their entire
People
car.
actually have. They drove through the one over off of Lewis Center Road by the dam. Drove right through it.
Oh,
It doesn't surprise me, but
Right,
at the same
exactly.
time, you definitely wouldn't miss it if you hit that thing.
I think we just need consensus to go ahead and for Bill to move forward and take out that tree and we can reassess.
Two of them in there.
yeah.
I think it's like one small one and one smaller and one. I think just rip them both out because they're both so dense you're not going to see anything. The other one's just going to get as big anyhow.
Yeah, there's two there.
Bill, can they grab that with one of our tractors and just rip it out at the roots? Is that
Or do
possible?
you
Or
need
would
to
you be?
hire a tree removal company? I know it can be dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, our guys could cut the tree. We just cut a large pine at Township Hall property that was dead. They just took it down today. We could cut the tree, leave somewhat of a small stump there, and contact someone else, maybe pull the stump. But at least we can get it out of the way now.
Yeah, there we go. Let's cut it down.
Just get it taken care of. And
Thanks, Bill.
No, thank
Great.
you both for your comments and your patience. Thank you.
I'll just throw this out there then too, just to keep everyone in the loop so that things keep moving forward. We had a serious accident at East Powell Road and 750 this weekend. Where unfortunately someone passed away in that accident. I've had several residents reach out to me about a guardrail being put there. And again, Bill is assisting and reaching out to District 6. Is that correct, Bill?
Yes.
Which is ODOT. And obviously I've seen that intersection there. It's by my business and serious accidents that happen there. But we're gonna look into, see if they won't put a guardrail up.
Where was it? I saw the vehicles, the emergency vehicles all there piled up in front of
The bank, the
Yeah.
old bank.
So where's the guardrail proposal at that would prevent? I don't know what happened in the accident.
It's my understanding, there's a deep culvert, actually on both sides. I think you would need a guardrail on both sides. And the cars go down into that culvert. I believe a guardrail may assist in those types of accidents.
So was it wasn't a collision? It was just a loss of control type accident?
That I'm unfortunately do not know the details. I just know it was loss of life and that a guardrail would assist in that, the type of accident that it was.
Okay. Hey, Bill, it might be, I think Powell's the county, right?
It's a 750 or Powell Road, which Polaris, that's where Polaris turns into Powell Road. It's actually ODOT.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking that where that road intersects, it's an ODOT and a county road. If ODOT road and a county road, am I wrong? Thinking of the wrong intersection?
You're right. That's the Delaware County Road.
So you may want to ping our liaison and with the county too, and see if we can get some added pressure from that end to get the wheels going.
That was Trustee Tranto contacted me with that concern this morning. I did send it to our Delaware County liaison, and he then forwarded on to ODOT District 6 on our behalf.
Perfect.
Well, it sounds like we have consensus and are all in agreement here. I'm moving forward on the roundabouts.
Okay, we'll get that taken care of tomorrow.
Thank you. And Bill, we'll stick with you here if you want to move on to parks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening I have two resolutions for your consideration. One is a resolution approving a field use agreement with Olentangy United Soccer. The second resolution is authorizing the advertisement for swimming pool management contract bids. That contract was, the documents were vetted by Attorney Betts, and feel really confident about them and look forward to getting them moving ahead. I'm
Really
also
like seeing this done so early also, Bill, not waiting,
No.
not in March. Like,
no,
I really appreciate that.
well, thank you. Also, Mr. Chairman, with your permission and perhaps after the consideration of the resolutions, I'd like to revisit the North Road Park Improvement Project. Again, looking for the Board of Trustees to reconsider and perhaps offer a consensus to move forward with the advertising for bids. Just like to remind you that what we have in mind is the project would include construction of a concession stand, a pavilion, playground, a splash pad, landscaping, trail connections, and also expansion of the parking area to hopefully take up some of the, allow additional parking for some of the other amenities. And if, Mr. Chairman, if you do permit this continued discussion, as you mentioned earlier, we have Mr. Brooks Vogel of Corps of Engineers on standby to give us a summary of how we arrived at the amenities that are included in the project we're presenting to you.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, thank you for that.
Mr. Vogel, are you there?
I am here, if you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. Hey, Brooks.
Trustee Grumbles, good evening.
I haven't seen you in a while. I like the new look. It's a good deal.
Well, thank you. What better time to try something crazy?
That's it.
And thank you, Chairman Rivers and Trustee Taranto as well for having me tonight. And so as Bill said, if now's the proper time, we can revisit, kind of summarize where we are at and try to get on the same page. And Michelle, can I, if I share a screen here, I assume?
It should work. And Brooks, are you the 847 number that's on this as well now?
That is not me. I don't think it's me.
No, it's not.
And Michelle, it says host enabled participant screen sharing.
Okay.
Okay, there we are.
That's a Chicago area code, Michelle.
Whoever is the 847 number, can you at least state your name so we understand who you are? Unless, was anybody aware of anybody else joining this?
No, I think it's fine to just remove them from the meeting, Michelle.
Okay. I will do that.
There you go, Brooks. You made it.
Okay, so you can see the screen of the plan of the park. Okay, I lost. Well, I will just again. This has been in the works, obviously, for some time, and we are. Just want to revisit this and make sure that we're all on the same page and with the end goal to get it out to bid and get the concession and the shelters and the added parking out here to hopefully by this summer to get that into use this summer and really fulfill the master plan of the park. And so this is the current plan, and I know there's been various versions of this that we've visited and discussed previously with some other amenities that were talked about here, such pickleball and tennis and or basketball. And so this is where we ended up in discussions with both Andrew and Bill. And part of this was the original intent of the park being primarily a heavy soccer park, kind of geared towards tournaments and higher level tournaments. The fields are very well built with enhanced soil and enhanced seeding and under drainage. And so they really are fairly high end fields out here, which was the intent. And so that was always the intent. And we've heard subsequent to that there's some parking concerns, especially on big events. And so hearing that, and even with the original design, the current parking is 182 spaces. But there was always the vision of being able to expand that both north and south of the existing parking lot. And so the plan with this phase 2 was to add the parking to the north here, which would add 98 spaces. So that should relieve a lot of the parking issues and some of the part of the issue here is that, if there is an overflow situation and even the overflows that currently exist in the grass north and south, when those fill up, it's very difficult to park along North Road. And so that's a constraint. And so the added 98 spaces should relieve a lot of that congestion. And there is also some added expansion to the south if that were ever desired or necessary. And so just a quick summarize kind of where that compares. We compared that to other similar soccer complexes. And so North Road Park is here in the orange. Currently, and again, there's 5 fields, or this field 5 can be broken down into 3 separate fields. And so depending on how you look at it, there's either 5 or 8 fields out here. And just again, looking at similar parks and how many parking spaces there are per soccer field. So the first 2 here are the current version of North Road Park without the added parking. And so, that compares similarly to other similar complexes throughout central Ohio. Of course, it's always a bit of an unknown depending on tournaments and how the games are staged. If every field has a game starting at the same time, there's very little swing space in between those. So, everyone's that's at the game is parked, and everyone coming for the game that starts in 10 minutes is trying to find a spot. And so you have a big demand as opposed to if you could, space those out and stagger them by a half hour, it spreads out the load, but that gets into an operations issue with the tournament folks. But looking at this, if these last 2 bars here are just adding the 98 spaces to the equation. And so as you go ahead.
So Brooks, if we just add the 98, we retain pickleball and the dog park, is that feasible?
So maybe, and I'll get into some of the thought process there too. So adding the 98 just with the soccer, you can see it puts the parking here, on the very high end, and even I would say off the charts compared to some of the other similar complexes. So the added parking should definitely alleviate a lot of the parking concerns, we think.
Okay.
And Trustee Grumbles, to answer that question, and so as we, again, with the original intent of the park being soccer minded, and we subsequently looked into what other amenities could be added out here, pickleball, and I'll pull up that exhibit just to maybe refresh your memories. Here was some concepts at that time. And so again, this is the existing parking. Here's the proposed added parking to the north, which we were now going to move forward with. And then there was pickleball, basketball, and even a dog park down here to the south.
Just to point out, this was a concept that actually was agreed upon by all three trustees. We, I don't know if it was a resolution, but we had consensus for this particular concept.
Yeah, and this was the concept that ultimately led to there being agreement, if I could put it that way. You know, I know the park had stalled before my tenure even started, and in the discussions that I had coming aboard, this was a way that we were able to mitigate every board member's concerns and arrive at an agreement and allow us to break the gridlock and move forward with the park. So,
Well, I think looking back at the history of this, I think the land was donated somewhere around 20 years ago. And then if you look at the parks master plan from 2008, this was always a main focus as a sports park. I think by the time we got to, well, and this was part of the parks levy in 2016 was a major focus as, you know, the big project in Orange Township. So I think there has always been overall identity for this park. However, things over time do change, and this has been a long time coming. So I think originally there was a plan for very large concessions, which, you know, maybe back 10 years ago made sense, but now with the popularity in food trucks, and you look at other models that have been successful, you know, some of those things just needed some tweaking and some changes. So I think there was some discussion as far as the plan still made sense in regards to the concessions and the shelter and some other things, but you know, the idea of it being a sports park and ultimately was settled on as far as soccer, you know, that always was the vision here. And I think everyone is in agreement with the different elements here that we have settled on. But as soccer, the games and the different folks that have now started using the park, there's been some concerns as far as the traffic. I mean, the good thing is we've already seen it's going to be a very, very popular park. So the question, you know, was, do we have enough parking there? And if this is a popular park and it's getting a lot of use, we want to make sure that, you know, it's obviously has enough parking and it's going to continue to be a success. So I think we're all in agreement here as far as the different elements. It was just ensuring that the plans going forward here, you know, overall, that it's going to have long-term success. There's also fields outside of this at the high school that are next to it. You also have the addition of Jennings Park. So, you know, I think there's some synergy there, and there's no doubt things that are out of our control around us that folks will be looking to this park to use, you know, for events going forward. That absolutely is something that I know will be proposed.
Brooks, from a financial standpoint, looking at our numbers recently, I know that we're a little bit more fiscally mindful with the way things are trending and the state of the state, I guess you could say. How big of a investment would a splash pad is that projected to be financially?
I believe the estimates on that were somewhere around 250 to 300K.
For just a splash pad?
Yes, and that was because, you know, and that's maybe a reduced number, I'll call it that, because obviously the new concession building directly north of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that that being right adjacent to it gave a spot to install all the plumbing and the equipment and stuff that goes with the splash pad. And so that made a lot of sense to add it there versus, if that goes somewhere else, then you've got to find a place to house that mechanical equipment and the pumps
Correct.
and all
That
the.
splash pad is going to bring probably a lot of traffic, a lot of parking on a daily basis.
Correct.
That's probably the biggest thing we probably should remove from this park and put it elsewhere.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too. If parking is a concern, I can see that being one of the biggest draws to that park consistently day in and day out, especially at times when there's going to be sports in session, if you will. And I think we have other opportunities to put that in places with plumbing and pump houses and things like that, potentially nearby some of the work we're looking at Township Hall potentially in the future and in other venues. I do think a splash pad's a great fit for the township. And even if we went in and revitalized North Orange, since the pool's there, that could also be something we look at in the future with ample parking over there. But if we needed places to park and we wanted to repurpose or reallocate area, I'm in agreement too that a state-of-the-art concession is probably not necessary as much as an area where they can sit down like a covered shelter, more simplistic. But I know we have restrooms and things like that in this area too. And when we looked at it last time, it wasn't a significant cost to add the kitchenette, if you will, onto that structure. And when I look at the square footage or the whatever you want to call it, if we eliminated that splash pad and brought it tighter, there would be an opportunity to potentially put the amenities over there that we would be moving or displacing if we did expand south. The other thing I'll throw out, I'm not hung up on basketball. We have basketball throughout the township in multiple locations that exist today. The two things that I am stuck on are pickleball and the dog park. I don't think we have either of those. I don't think that they're going to draw tremendous amounts of traffic. I think a lot of people would enjoy the dog park that are already out on a walk, so they're not going to necessarily be driving, but they can if they want. And you're not talking about a huge amount of traffic. I know there's one up the road at Allen Creek, but this would be something for our residents. And it's also the idea of implementing that shelter at the pond for a quieter place where people could pause and take a break while they're on a walk or they're passing by, or even if their kids are playing and they want to step over and catch a breather or whatever you want to call it in between tournaments. So, and if there's no dogs, throw the 3-year-olds in there and chase them around or something because it's fenced in, right? So, bottom line is there's that space down there that regardless doesn't seem to be occupied. I'd like to propose we keep that area as a dog park with the shelter. And if we're going to cut and displace, I'm fine moving the splash pad and taking a more conservative approach on a concession or shelter. If we need to displace pickleball, putting it up there to the north. But I also think if you leave it where it is and you eliminate basketball, you can open up more parking right there and still keep the dog park as well, if that makes sense. But I think moving that splash pad out and sliding that over, you create some good space. And from a fiscal standpoint, would look to retain that amount of money given our recent conversations anyway, and potentially reinvest that elsewhere.
And two things for me. The park was originally supposed to open in 2018 for the fields, the soccer, and the cricket. There was some issues with seating and the fields that delayed that. And again, this has been a long time in the works. So for the shelter and the playground, I think we definitely want those to move forward because this has taken a very long time to, to come together. I think those are obvious no-brainers. We know the cricket and soccer are going to be very popular, so we want to make sure that we have everything there as far as parking, and we can support those fields. But we also are getting ready to, begin putting together our new parks master plan, reaching out to the residents and the community for input, reassessing all of our parks. So I think we've got a lot of great ideas. I think we want to see North Road move forward with the obvious things that it needs. And, I think this is a chance for a great first quarter outreach campaign with our community and looking at these parks and getting input and putting all this together, like the splash pad, for example. Like splash pad will be a big hit. What is the best location for it? Looking at through the township at what parks we have and the neighborhoods and what their feedback is. I think it's a great opportunity to get everyone's ideas and put together a great roadmap here, for the future of our parks.
Didn't you just do that? You sent a survey out and got everyone's input? I believe it's the last meeting you told me it was online when I asked if I could see it.
Right. So this is a new parks master plan. The last one we did was 2008. So just like the comp plan, this is a complete master plan the third party is putting together for us that's going to reassess all of our parks. So this is a major project, just like the comp plan. Outreach will be part of it, but this is much, much more than a simple survey.
Yeah, I don't think it's a major risk to put a fence around existing structure. I think that's a minimal cost. Shelter already over there with the pump house. So I'm not as concerned with that feature. I think that's more of a no-brainer cost investment wise. And then from a pickleball standpoint, I think the feedback on that's been clear. And if we're paving and we're pouring and we have existing construction going in, I would rather scale what we have going on than have to retroactively go back and find a place for that and delay it further. I know people are looking forward to that. Again, that's just based on surprising interactions I've had around it. But like I said, splash pad, more basketball, and things of that nature, I think I'm fine holding off on. But would turn to you, Brooks, and I guess the other board members for their perspective on. Agree that we need to get the playground and the ADA playground done and a shelter to the south, but the others that we already have in place and the added parking to the north would be a welcome addition. I know that. I don't see risk in doing the other two. I think that's a minimal step forward with all things considered. It'd still leave us that southeast corner if we kept the pickleball there to expand if we wanted. And I don't see any harm in putting the fence around just to have that dog park.
Yeah, I appreciate your insight. I appreciate you listening to what the residents want. And it very much is a soccer park with additional amenities that reach different ages. And we did have a consensus on that particular layout at one point. I can only move forward and support that particular park and not support the current layout that's being proposed tonight.
Hey Brooks, could you slide that north where the concession and splash pad are?
In here?
Yeah, and even if you flipped it. There you go.
Just quick and dirty. And a couple of thoughts on the concession. So the concession piece of this, and I can flip to a floor plan here, is really fairly minor part of this building. It's mostly the restrooms here
It's just a bunch of walls, you said when we met in person, I think.
and some sinks and it's set up to allow for, maybe a hot dog warmer or crock pots, things like that. But it's not a full
We
blown.
even said storage, right? Be a pretty good bit of
Correct.
storage. Yeah.
Correct.
I'm fine with this. It was way more elaborate if I recall, and we scaled it back. I just wanted to
make
see
a
how
note,
the pickleball would.
The pickleball has to be turned a certain way, right, Brooks? For sun.
Typically,
Yeah.
yes. And so, and maybe to speak also to the splash pad and some of those thoughts, like I mentioned, it was easy to do here since we had a place to house the mechanicals, and at the time there was plenty of parking, we thought, and I think that that's still the case, especially with the added parking. And when we were looking at alternative locations for the splash pad, a lot of the other parks didn't really lend themselves. Walker Woods is not suitable, especially in the neighborhood that it's in. Roe Park isn't big enough. Glen Oak is not ideal for it either. And so this became one of the better places for it. And I know that
You look at Bridge Park by any chance? By the
that
bridge?
I think is only being about an acre, and so you need enough parking to accommodate that. We also thought about the township owned parcel behind the Kroger, and I know that gets a little more complicated now with the 23 overlay.
What about Township Hall?
And Township Hall too, and so we and Trustee Rivers, like you said, there's the upcoming Parks Master Plan, but we did look at the other parks with some other amenities that could be added to maybe offset removing pickleball or basketball from North Road, and the thought there was that if we know there's a parking concern, can we add these facilities somewhere else that has the space for it, and there's ample parking, since these aren't going to be huge parking drivers, but if we're already concerned with parking for soccer, the more we can move out of there and alleviate some of the duplicating parking demands, that
What's the reluctance to put a dog park at North Road? Is there a concern?
It's not a huge concern, but it is. A couple of the concerns are that it's kind of down here in a corner, which I think may be okay, but it's not a huge space, and a lot of this space is sloped, so it's not flat either. And then the other concern was it is fairly removed from the parking, and so it's not you're not just going to get out of your car and hop out and you're at the dog park, and so it's a little bit inconvenient. I'm not a dog owner, so I don't know how inconvenient that is, and so there again we were where else can that go, and looking at Glen Oak is open, and but with the power lines, we've heard concerns about when there's dew on the ground that can affect. It electrifies the ground essentially, and so that's uncomfortable for dogs. And so that comes down to, again, having enough space to find a place for it. And so maybe this isn't ideal, but when you evaluate it versus the other parks, it's feasible. But as I mentioned, looking at some of the other parks, and I'll pull up Township Hall here. It suits itself well, and especially considering the potential future for Township Hall. 5 pickleball courts, in here pretty well, and even it's already got basketball. If there was a desire to add either more basketball or even tennis, it's pretty well suited for that too. And there's enough parking to.
What about a dog park instead of tennis right there?
Yeah, I think that, it's a nice open space, and that would be suitable as well there. And it's close to parking and the other amenities, the shelter.
Not a lot of other stuff going on there that would distract the dogs and everything too.
Correct. And I understand the pond here is being improved or going away. I'm not sure what the disposition of that is. And so we tried to look at it holistically to evaluate the parking demands and consider those. And if there are things that were low hanging fruit to move somewhere else, then that was worth considering. Compounded by the difficulty potentially of adding a splash pad.
So the shelter that's where the dog park was planned, I assume that's going away too then? Or would we be able to retain that in this new vision?
At North Road Park?
Correct, because the utility would still be there, correct?
Yes, so that was intended as the maintenance building specifically for parks. And
as a partial open shelter.
So
on the backside when we met, that's what we talked about, for like a smaller sitting area with a table or something.
Yeah, the first iteration was as a parks maintenance building, and that was opted out of just to try to consolidate those uses and maybe use the old Township Hall site. And so that went away. And then there was a thought, yes, to having this just be an open shelter, kind of matching some of the other open shelters here. And then that is not actually in the current plan either, that when the dog park and some of the other amenities here were taken out, this didn't have a use either. And so, but again, it was planned for at one time, and so can be added if that was the desire.
I just
So I guess to move forward with North Road Park, can we agree on doing the parking expansion at the north side of the parking lot, add the restroom building, as Brooks had it right there, add the playground, add the shelter, and add the pickleball courts?
The pickleball courts, I'm stuck at, we're adding back what we added. That's where I'm stuck right now, because we had consensus on a design, and now we're redesigning what we had consensus on. So,
well, yeah, keep in mind, we pulled those with concerns of parking, but if we're not having the splash pad, if we have just the pickleball courts as shown there, the shelter just to the left, the playground area just to the right there, and the concession stand to the north of that, is that something we can move forward with the expanded parking area?
Does that give us enough in parking?
Oh, if we remove all of the
56 spots per field, I think would be more than sufficient for parking. And I mean, that's an insane amount of parking compared to, I mean, when he put the stats up, that's twice what you're looking at anywhere else. So I'm not concerned with parking if we move north.
Yeah, and even with this layout, you still have the future parking to the south that could be paved, and even if pickleball occupies half of that, there's still about 54 spaces here that could be paved.
Yeah, I think that's that's fine. I'm not opposed to a splash pad, but in a conversation of drawing straws, that's going to go pretty quick over the other stuff we all agreed on in my book. If you scroll down again, Brooks, so in your assessment, there's zero utility in having a dog park just based on the terrain.
I wouldn't say zero, Ben,
I
but
thought that we put it there because of the terrain. It's
That's
not
kind of what
an
I,
easy area to use, so it was perfect for a dog park.
I just like having the idea of a shelter that's not, at the end of the day, the park's built around supporting, soccer, cricket, and a playground and activities. At the same time, it's still a park, and there's a nice, more serene area over there with a pond. There's nothing to do there except, hey, look, a pond. A shelter would be great. It's going to get fish in it. All of our ponds have fish in them. So you're going to have a shelter there where families can go, regardless of the dog park. And I just think for the residents in that area, I mean, you got major neighborhoods around there, and they're going to have trail access to a park. I think you leave the dog park as planned, the pickleball is planned, keep the shelter there, if nothing, knowing with the kids fit. I saw dozens of pictures of kids fishing in the township ponds over COVID, with COVID and getting into that, and parents taking their kids out to catch fish for the first time at the ponds, Glen Oak, different neighborhoods, even Orange Township over by the township hall, the ponds over that run into South Old State. So I think they're going to get used. I think the dog park's a nice touch. I think people will definitely use that. My family will use it. I know that. And families around us would use it too. Because Alum Creek's dog park's pretty busy. And if our kids have games, we can take them there, and one parent can take the dogs for a run and take them home and come back or whatever. And I think it's a nice touch. It's not going to hurt. The cost is minimal. I love the idea of taking a regular pump house, which would otherwise be zero utility outside of housing a pump, and adding, again, minimal cost for a shelter, a stick-built shelter. You're putting a couple $100 picnic table there, and you're expanding upon your utility of the park goes up, and it appeals to a broader sense of the resident base. So, as I've said every call and discussion, I'm indifferent about basketball. We have multiple parks for basketball. I see kids and even adults using that. So I think in the future we can expand if we need to or whatever. But we don't have a dog park. We don't have pickleball. Both of those have been on surveys that we've gotten. Both of them were well received. I think we've got to consider that and move forward. I think the splash pad would be a hit. But we're talking about competing interests, then, a splash pad in the middle of a major sports complex or sports field area, and what you're drawing up now, even, we could consider that too. Not, if it'll fit there, or whatever, but, that's
right,
my
so
2 cents.
with the pickleball, you got the dog park in the corner, the shelter there. We're kind of that we have enough parking here. Are we good to move forward then with this plan?
You kind of cut out. What did you say?
Sorry. So with the dog park, the shelter in the corner, we've got next to the dog.
So basically everything but the basketball court and splash pad. Correct?
Sorry, keep cutting out. So we got the dog park, the shelter, and the pickleball. are we good to move forward with this? We've got enough parking, right? We're good with Brooks. We're confident that we can handle the soccer traffic.
I would be confident with the amount of parking that's being added and even having this as overflow to the southeast still, I think that should provide more than enough parking. To the extent you provide enough parking at a soccer park, but you know, you got to balance that with what makes sense. And
Brooks,
so, yes, I think.
Do you have a pulse on the splash pad? If we halt that now and build everything else and look to retro that in, how much of a cost difference is that going to make if we just go at it now while we're doing everything else versus retro? Ballpark.
You know, I don't think it's any or much additional beyond the cost of the splash pad itself. You know, I think there's maybe low-hanging fruit that can be designed into the concession building that doesn't increase the cost a lot, but it saves more cost in the future if you were to add it. But
okay,
I don't think the costs to do it later are significant. I'll say, you know, 30 to 50,000 maybe on
10% more. Okay.
Yeah.
But you can mitigate that by building in the mechanicals now, if you will.
Yeah, and there's different ways to that the splash pad can operate, you know, with tanks and those being external to a building versus internal, and you know how the access to the equipment works. And so, you know, I think we can work through that, but I don't think the added cost to do it later are significant.
Okay, so since we're deciding, can we yay or nay as a board on the splash pad now and either move on or move out, one of the two? Because I don't want to have to go while we have it up and we have our engineer here and everybody's here. I'd rather just iron it out and be finalized. I think we've solved.
Ask a quick question, trustee.
Sure.
So with that, if the intent was to defer it, so when Brooks goes back and does the design, what would he do where the splash pad is? Would that just remain sort of an open area without any landscaping, without any trails? Because originally the playground was more in the middle and took up, you know, it took up roughly the same amount of space, but the buildings got pushed outward to accommodate that splash pad.
Correct. That's why I'm asking, because it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to leave this call and have to come back in another month when we're figuring out that. So I'd rather just give a yes or no now and let him go back and do one drawing versus paying for another change.
Correct. And that's what I'm asking. So like the playground was repositioned and it was spread out there. So would you want to leave the playground where it's at and then leave the splash pad area as just a vacant grass?
I'm asking the board to approve the splash pad or not approve the splash pad. If we don't approve it, then I think we go back to a giant playground. If we do approve it, then we implement as seen and move forward. What I'm asking for is a conclusion, the final way ahead.
Thank you, trustee. I misunderstood what you were saying, so I'll shut up now.
No, I thought, to me, it sounded like with the amount of traffic that a splash pad could bring and making sure that we have enough parking, it sounded to me like probably wasn't going to be a fit. Did I misunderstand?
I think it'll be a draw. That's for sure. But if we're going to have 56 spots per field, not to mention another 10 if we expand south, I just can't see there being a parking constraint there personally. 56 spots a field, you're looking at 15 kids per team, 20 kids per team. That's allowing 40 spots plus coaching and 45 spots with coaches and referees and everybody. And then another 50 spots with grandparents and whoever else. You're still looking at you know, if you do the math on that, if every single field is taken up, you know, you're still, what's the quick math on that? Since obviously it's escaping me. You got 100 spots left.
Well, and I think that's one of the things of some of these being delayed that probably works out to our advantage. Was you would think there'd be enough parking, but from year one we found there wasn't enough, and it was definitely a major concern. There was problems there. So I understand that. I think that would be enough. I hope it'd be sufficient, but we didn't think we'd have problems year one, and we did.
Why don't we schedule them a little differently so that they're not all scheduled at the same time? Space it out, the scheduling of them.
Well, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the demand is that great. And it goes back to, like I said, our prior plans and our surveys. And the top of our list is sports and recreation in Orange Township. I mean, that's the number one in demand. So if that's what our residents are looking for, I don't think we want to, lessen the availability of our fields.
You're right. Soccer is the number one sport here in Orange Township. Yep.
And it's mainly poor for-profits that are renting these fields, correct?
Soccer,
The
yes.
nonprofits are going elsewhere, is that correct?
Well, I don't know where they're going, but
Yes.
cricket is pretty much friends getting together, renting the fields. Soccer, I think it is, it's an organized league.
Right.
No
I think we
question
need
about
to
that.
evaluate our pricing on that also with these for-profits.
Yeah, I saw the pricing on the recent agreement, and I agree strongly with that.
Well, and I think, looking at the future of Orange Parks going forward, there was a lot of money invested in this park and invested in those fields. So I think we need to make sure that they're successful. But as far as feelings going forward on, how we structure this and what we schedule, that's something that will need to be discussed.
Investment's a taxpayer investment, though. I want to make that clear. And so, if Brooks, can you zoom out again to the big picture? If you put the extra spots in there, I would say this would be my suggestion, and this would just knock everything out in one go. Keep your pickleball, shelter, and dog park like we talked about. Instead of coming back and having overflow parking to the southeast, just build it in. Do it now. Get your parking all done at once when your paving trucks and your crews are there. So pave the north parking addition, the southeast parking addition, insulate against the concerns that were just mentioned. Put the splash pad in, put the concession in, keep all your design as is so you mitigate the amount of changes that you're going to have to go back with your team and make to the most recent iteration. That's going to be cost savings. Keep all the fields the way they are. Take the basketball out. Everything else is the same. We've got a for-profit entity coming in to support for-profit entities in the near future in Jennings Park. That's going to displace some of our demand at this park. We also have Glen Oak, Roe Park, Walker Woods, all the other parks that are rented out for for rec leagues that we can leverage as well. So that's my I guess vote. I want to minimize the amount of work we're paying you to go and do and kind of run in circles on, Brooks. No offense. I can tell you appreciate our business. That hair product's got to be, that's top dollar stuff right there, buddy. But I think that would solve everybody's concern. We would have the parking knocked out right off the jump. We're not going back in and tearing stuff up and having equipment laying around and disrupting. As folks start to normalize and get used to the park, it's all there, it's all done. One big go, I think would be the best approach. That's my 2 cents.
So we're putting the splash pad back in?
Yeah, we took basketball out, which adds 54 spots. Is that correct, Brooks?
Correct.
96 spots to the north because we took out basketball. And how many spots exist today as is?
182.
So we've upped it by over 50%. What, 70% increase in parking, something like that? And in addition to, you don't have to do a calculator, really. Please don't. 62.7%. I'm sorry, I was off.
84%.
There you go.
I'm
So
not opposed though, Ben, to moving that splash pad to the Township Hall Park.
I'm not either. I just hate to,
I
I'm
see what
kind
you're
of
saying, yes.
changing it
I guess-
around. We're going to pay as much to have another engineering drawing and everything, for between that and Township Park if we just built it anyway. So, yeah, I've seen the hourly charge, 150,000 for a couple drawings, and I'm kidding, but that's fine. It just seemed like the
I guess
simplistic approach.
Access and availability. So if we have pickleball, it's getting a lot of use. It's very popular. We have a splash pad. It's very popular. Can you get in the park and use those things while other events are going on? So that's what I just keep going back to. And honestly, that's my question. I don't know. Do we have that it takes away from the availability of a splash pad if you have it in the middle of all these other things? What's the identity of the park? What's the typical day like? What's the typical crowd? So those are the things I keep going back and forth on beyond just, the parking.
Bunch of kids, yeah, playing sports and get done with your game, hit the splash pad and run home. I don't know. And then Brooks, what does it do if you expand the playground? How big of how much, so if we took the splash pad out,
Mm-hmm.
do we add even more parking to the north of the concession when it's like if we just kept the playground how it is? Because if it's a soccer field and we don't want a playground, and we slide the concession shelter essentially where the splash pad is, now do we have another 50 spots sitting there probably?
Yeah, you're saying expand this west.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's possible. And this is a fairly large playground, and so I think that need is addressed with the size of it as shown here.
Okay, so are you all open to that? Adding even more parking, expanding it to the west?
I am.
All right, so then we got another 50 spots. So now that's got to be close to 110%, Brooks. 110.7.
Brooks, in my mind, can you compare the size of this playground with the one at North Orange? Similar?
This is about 100 by 80 plus or minus, I think. I don't have a feel off the top of my head for North Orange.
It's got to be close to like Roe Park, though.
So North Orange is
35 yards or so.
They 100 by 150 plus or minus. So it's
about half.
The North Orange is bigger. Yeah, 100 by, and that one, it's spread out a little more into different modules.
This is more like a row park, isn't it? Like a taller, I can't remember the side rendering of it.
Yeah, I don't have that handy, unfortunately. But yeah, this is a big, tall structure. There
Just if
was
we take
a,
the splash pad out, we can go back, what, to the original size or add to it of the playground? I think the original
yeah,
size.
I think, if you expand this west, there's still a little room here to even make this bigger if you wanted to.
All right, so what's our final agreement here so we can all move on?
No
I think-
splash pad, I think everybody agrees.
Yeah, I think take the pickleball, dog park, plenty of parking, and then we'll look at the updating the master plan. I think that's the key thing we'll have going forward is splash pad is obviously would be a big hit. Has a lot of appeal where we want to put it.
Right, but
not
for this
opposed
park.
to- I think we can even start looking now for a good place for that, which I think the Township Hall would be a good place for a splash pad.
I'm fine with that too, but for now, with that spot that we free up, can we agree to either expand the playground or add more parking? I think that's our two options.
Probably do
Probably
probably a little bit
parking.
of both, right? Well, I'm fine if you want to keep playground.
Well, we
as is,
definitely need
add
parking, but
Is that Brooks? Can you give us a little wiggle room on the park and still get 50 spots out of that probably?
Yeah, I think you could, expand the playground to the north edge of, say, the existing parking lot, something like this. And then, still have space to expand, new parking further west.
Perfect. There it's it. That sounds like the winner. Plus, keep in mind when you reorientate that parking where it currently vertical, or sorry, east-west, I guess, you're gonna increase the parking in that new spot. It's gonna be that same orientation, so you're gonna get a lot more utility out of it. Is that fair? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so I guess, so concession still stays here. Which I think that needs to be here, obviously, with the restrooms and the shelter. And so this we can reorient this maybe, but yeah, I think there's ways to expand the playground, expand the parking, and still maintain the concession, the restroom building.
Perfect. I think you got consensus then. Finally.
so there is a resolution. Are we able to add those things or we need to have a new resolution made?
I think we've got consensus tonight here for Mr. Vogel and his plan to go forward. And I'm sure we'll be getting the final updated layout, but I would think we're good for tonight to let him move forward. And if we have to go back and retro approve anything, that shouldn't be a problem.
You want to give him consensus to take a peek at Township Hall and prep for our parks master plan. I know they're just going to go out and get feedback and put something together, but just to get since he's already started work on that, maybe get a decent scope ironed out. It sounds like we want a splash pad. I think that'd be a welcome addition. Maybe Brooks keeping the pickleball at Township Hall and adding a splash pad off of that area where the tennis court was as an alternative plan. See what you come up with there. If that's not too much for the board to consent on, I'm giving my consent here verbally. Trustee Rivers or Taranto?
I mean, I think we've got approval for a new master plan. So I think obviously we're going to be looking for feedback, but I don't know if that's something we want to put in motion tonight. That's, I think, the top of the to-do list for first quarter.
This is Lisa. So I heard that we're moving forward with the consensus is moving forward with the plans as discussed with North Road Park, including addition of parking, removal of basketball, and maintaining pickleball, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
And maintaining the dog park.
Thank you, missed that one. Thank you.
All right, are we good for moving forward? Anything else from Mr. Vogel?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank Brooks and the good conversation. I think this will be a good plan moving forward, but thank you for the time.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Brooks. It's always a pleasure to work with you and appreciate all your time and commitment to the township.
All right, thank you, and thank you for working through this, and we'll get this going and try to get this open yet this year.
No consensus on the splash pad and pickleball at Township Hall. Well, the pickleball you've already done, but no consensus on the splash pad.
I did pickleball at North Road Park, not at Township Hall.
That's correct.
Okay.
I was just making sure you're clear that we're not going to do anything. That there wasn't a second for the Township Hall for splash pad and pickleball.
Yep, thank you.
All right, Brooks. Thank you. You enjoy the rest of your evening.
Okay, thank you all. Have a happy holiday season. Thanks for having me.
And I did want to add with the new master plan going forward and looking back at past surveys and where things were in the 2008 master plan and with the comp plan 2018. Overwhelmingly, number one was in the parks was the connectivity that we've got, all these trails, and there's just some key areas missing connectivity, and I think that needs to be a major focus here for 2021.
That's a good point, and we just thinking of reinvesting the dollars. That did come up quite a bit, going door to door as well. That some of the neighborhoods felt isolated; they didn't have access, and I know we recently got complaints specific to Lewis Center Road, I believe it was. And I know the folks to the north end of the township have very little connectivity. So I think that's fair. Good mention.
All right, we do have 2 resolutions here, Mr. Cowan.
That's right. The field use agreement with Olentangy United Soccer and the resolution to advertise for swimming pool management contracts.
All right, and we're at 405. Lisa, correct?
Hey, Bill, how did we come up with the financial agreement on the Olentangy United, the pricing?
Same pricing as last year, the same pricing that we included with the previous 2 field use agreements that were approved by the board this year.
How are our field use agreement pricing? How is it calculated?
Based upon blocks of time or full day use.
Right. I guess what I'm asking is, how is the dollar amount derived or ascertained? Is it something that we consult someone on, or is it something that's a industry average, or?
Oh, no, it was just a price that was set and agreed upon by the board.
Bill, if I could comment here real quick, then if I remember correctly in the past, it was based on the hourly wage of the parks workers, how many hours it takes them to prepare the fields, clean up the fields, cost of mowing, fertilizing. So it was kind of like an average rate based on those things in the past.
Okay. And then, Bill, if I could, as the Parks liaison, I guess, make a recommendation that is part of the master plan. You and Mr. King consult with the experts on a formula. And I would ask that we mention the categories Trustee Taranto cited or whatever the resolution in the past brought forth from a consideration standpoint. I think we also have to take into account the displacing of our residents and their investment in the park, almost from a depreciation type consideration, if you will. The structures, all the cost and that type thing that goes into it. If you look at what it takes to maintain and the offset, you have to also take into consideration that the utility offset, right? So just a couple of points. I think it'd be a good time though with the master plan to come in because they're going to have a pulse on other communities and best practices outside of our own township. So be a good idea to consult with them. Thank you.
I support that.
I did make a note of that. So thank you for that.
All right, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 20-405 to enter into an agreement with Olentangy United Soccer for use of recreational premises located at North Road and Glen Oak Parks.
Second?
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Taranto.
Yes.
And I will make the motion to approve resolution 20-406, approving letting a request for bids for a 3-year combined contract for operation and management of the Orange Township swimming pool and swimming pool concession stand.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Taranto.
Yes.
Hey, Bill, one more thought. Make a note of in that price consideration. I think parking lot maintenance is going to be a increasing cost too, especially with asphalt repair and that type thing too. So I would say that we need to be mindful of that, especially on fields that are heavy, as this recent park, heavy in the parking toll or draw, if you will. So another note to put in.
Yeah, and I would also, I would also just say, just like what we're looking at with our mechanic over in fire, that we really need a fully loaded cost, not just an hourly wage for these employees. If we're factoring employee costs into this at all,
Benefits and everything.
you got it, fully loaded.
That's I assume that's what was done in the past, but now that you're saying that, I'm not sure. And I agree with that. Any business calculations I've ever done always included fully loaded costs.
It doesn't necessarily here.
Good
Okay.
insight.
Yeah, all good points.
All right, Mr. Cowan, is that all for parks?
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Public safety report, Captain Rice.
The only thing that I really had, we were going to address it in the administrative report, was ask for the increase in the amount and frequency of compensation for our part-time firefighters that we had previously discussed.
Okay, well, that's fine. Then we'll save that for the administrative report.
Chair, when we were redoing the template, I made sure it was in the public safety report. So it's queued up right there. If the board wanted to act on it now, or we can wait till later.
Well, we'll do the fiscal officer report, then we'll include that in with the administrative. So let's move ahead to a fiscal officer report, Mrs. Kraft.
Whoops, thank you for that. I have to apologize for getting the next resolution. Oops, it's not in there. It's probably must be further down. Let's just start with the approval of blanket certificates. This is just allowing us to kind of hit the ground running come January 1st as far as making sure we can pay our benefits, our standard operating costs, so to speak. You can see the line item there that on a blanket, the rule still applies that if it's anything over 10,000 does require board approval, but this is just kind of the standard operating procedure, looking at what our appropriations are, and then setting a blanket up, not for the full amount, but usually around 80% of the appropriation amounts. Okay, and then if we could go down to the purchase orders. The purchase orders are basically just for our utilities and for our lease, our operating lease for our copier equipment. So this, by doing a purchase order like this, we can, allows us to, for ease of entry for entering American Electric, we get like, I think 12 American Electric bills between fire, buildings and grounds, maintenance and parks. So this allows us to roll them all up into one purchase order. Okay, and then my last but not least, if you could air down, Michelle. This is what I have to apologize for adding so late. As you guys know, this coronavirus, the COVID relief money that we have been allocating, it's been kind of a moving target. I've been working closely with Andrew and his team to ensure we've got every dollar kind of allocated. And this today we were paying bills, trying to track down the last of the invoices and get as close as we can to what we've been allocated, so we can minimize what we return to the federal government. And by increasing, it looks like we're going to come under what we were originally thinking in purchase services and in supplies. And I'm asking to reallocate that to salaries for fire. And that's it. Any questions?
I have none.
All right, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 20-40407, approving 2021 blanket certificates.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Tranto.
Yes.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 20-408, approving 2021 purchase orders.
Second.
Mr. Rivers, Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles, Ms. Tranto.
Yes.
And I'll make the motion to approve resolution 20-409, revising and increasing permanent appropriations established in resolution 20-397.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Tranto.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now with that takes us to Mr. King and Captain Rice.
Got it. If you want to go ahead and sort of jump off where we left off last week with this resolution, feel free.
Yes, just as we spoke before about the increase in the wages or the salary for our part-time paramedic firefighters and the frequency of compensation, I could work with Ms. Kraft with.
Michelle, would you mind scrolling back up a little bit? It's back under the public safety section. It's before the fiscal officers. Oh, there it is. So what, I mean, it's pretty brief. You can read it for yourself, but just to give you the quick summary is what the chief and I remember the discussion being was the change it to a bi-weekly period, starting in sometime next year when we get the CBIZ upgrades up and running, setting the compensation at a maximum rate of $18 an hour. As I talked to the chief, there would be some still differences. We treat folks that didn't have their paramedic certification differently than those that did. They get paid at a slightly lower rate. But then it would allow on the last one to determine the compensation of all the current part-time firefighters to increase it effective December 1st. So that way, when they get paid their typical monthly paycheck at the end of this month, they would get the benefit of the whole month's raise for December. Did I miss anything, Scott?
No.
Any questions, comments?
No, I supported it last time and last meeting and still do. I think we've got to get them on par and be more competitive so that we're not experiencing the churn that we are today. But we also want them to feel like the township, recognizes the status of the position, and not just our community, but throughout. So I think it's the right starting step, and we need to keep a tighter pulse on this. Hopefully, it equips Captain Rice and the team to go out and more effectively recruit. So I'm happy to support it, and appreciate you all bringing that to the board's attention and keeping us informed.
Thank you.
All right, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 20-410 to increase the amount and frequency of compensation for part-time firefighters.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Taranto.
Yes.
So the next item on here was the sort of picking up off the table, the engagement letter with Eastman and Smith. I know Fiscal Officer Kraft had the opportunity to go through some bills, and I may misrepresent it, so I'll just touch it real briefly and then allow her to expand. But I think what we saw overall was that our spend this year was less than we were at last year significantly, and even a chunk of that was with Isaac Wiles, not even Eastman. And as everyone knows, we've had some significant expenses that Brian Zetz with Isaac and Wiles has been undertaking. So I don't know, Fiscal Officer Kraft, if you wanted to add anything to the information that I know you research for the board.
Yeah, so far what I'm finding is most of our Eastman and Smith invoices come down to basically 4 one-time issues. Our administrator at the first of the year, our change in our HR area. I'm trying to remember the other ones. The hiring of our new administrator, and there's one more. I want to say it was. I don't remember what the 4th is, but it's primarily kind of 4 issues from what I'm, from when I was kind of looking back through things.
And I know we have some current items that are pending with them that will require continued assistance.
Right. And I think it was brought up at the last meeting. So I did also reach out to Brian Zett at Isaac Wiles, and he sent me over today the engagement letter for them for 2021, because they would, at least there's a handful of things that they would handle through 2021. And but because it came in tonight, I didn't try to cram it in here. So we can do it at the reorg meeting or after. But I did get an engagement letter from them as well.
Great. We have anything to add? All right, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 20-411 employing Township's attorneys on an annual basis for the year of 2021.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Taranto.
Yes.
So the last major item was, since we're reaching the end of the year and I believe we've used up all of our regularly scheduled meetings, it made sense to just make sure that we affirmatively set the reorg date so that we could get out the notice and publication and all that kind of stuff. I'm assuming the board would want to do it on the Monday that they would normally have the meeting, which would be the 4th, but that's awful close to the holidays and after the weekends. So I didn't know if the board wanted to move it to a Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that, but that's, what I wanted to bring to the board's attention so we could get the publication out.
Do we have a preference, or is there any one that would like to do it other than January 4th?
I'm good with any of those dates.
Preference.
So are we both fine with January 4th, I'm hearing?
I am. Is the staff, would that be kind of hard on them to get everything ready?
Not that's been communicated to me, no. I know there's some vacation that's going to go on in the next 2 weeks, but unless I'm blanking on it, I don't recall anybody being off on that day.
You have New Year's Day on Friday the 1st. I know you guys do a lot getting ready for the meeting on that day. Would that throw a wrench in it?
Yeah, you know what? I'm fine. I think just to be safe.
Wednesday?
January. Oh, I was going to say, well, do you want to do it Wednesday then?
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Michelle. I do have a zoning commission meeting on January 5th.
So do you want to say January 6th, the Wednesday?
Only if you bring me a birthday cake.
I'll do that. Have it in person? Can we do it in person?
Yeah,
I'll sing to you, Debbie.
thank you. I'm good with that.
If we're looking at are we just setting January 4th? Or are we looking at the whole calendar?
We're looking, no, just the
First
first
meeting.
meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Can we do it? You want to do it in person on the 6th? Is that fair? Or do you not want to do it in person?
No, I was
No.
kidding.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to stick to our same schedule here for at least the short term.
Definitely through the winter here.
So we've got zoning on the 5th. So do we want to do it then on the 4th, 6th, or the 7th?
I'm good with the 4th or the 6th, but in order to help the staff, I would say we do it on the 6th.
And I would agree with Trustee Taranto. I mean, if you're asking me to give a preference, I think that would give us the max amount of time. And as long as Fiscal Officer Kraft doesn't feel like there's going to be anything that would hamstring her in getting the payroll together the following week with only that a little bit of time, then I don't see a problem with it.
I think it's going to be a long meeting too. I think there's a lot of stuff to cover in the organizational meeting.
There is.
From
So
my
just mentally
standpoint,
prepare yourself.
yeah, it'll be fine from my standpoint. The pay isn't until January 15th. So we've got, if we make decisions on the 6th, that's fine.
6th, right?
Yeah.
Wednesday the 6th.
Lisa, were you going to bring something else up about the schedule for the year?
Yeah, I was just, when I looked at what Val put out there on the backup, I just noticed February 15th is President's Day, I believe.
Normally it would fall on the 16th then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only date, scanning down them. That's the only thing that jumped out at me.
The other thing that jumped out at me was July 5th, day after the 4th of July. In the past, we kind of had 3 meetings in June and only 1 in July. But if that doesn't affect anybody else's schedule, then that's fine.
do we want to set the schedule tonight, or do we want to set that at the 6th meeting?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a sixth topic for me. we will we can bring all of the feedback to that meeting and iron that out. It'd probably be best because I think all of us will catch a few things. Those two we can fix right now going into it, but
So we're not doing the schedule, the year. We're just doing the first meeting of the year tonight. We're not doing the whole year.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
and we'll have to talk about time and all that stuff. I think we went away from the morning meetings and iron all that out on the 6th. Virtual cake and some song and dance.
And the other thing I guess I would throw out, Trustee Grumble, is just for a thought. Fiscal Officer Kraft and I had talked about this, and I will say for at least my part, I wouldn't say it's a recommendation, just maybe to think about is whether or not the board is happy with Monday meetings. So, that's just something I know that meetings tend to be sort of traditional and longstanding, and you try to avoid nights that other townships and things have. But I just thought I'd mention that Fiscal Officer Kraft and I'd had some discussions about, the workability of other nights.
Well, Mondays typically, there's a lot of jokes about Mondays, right? So if you want to tank another day of the week, I'm fine with it. But I was just thinking of keeping Mondays just the general.
Sure.
I'm kidding.
I'm
up. Hey, honestly, Andrew, I think if I would encourage you to work with staff and the department heads. You all have a tall order coming in on a Monday, getting organized for the week and digesting the goings on of the weekend prior. And Fiscal Officer Kraft and her role is much different than the board's, right? So she's got a much more tedious and time intensive job in running her department. So if you all have a suggestion, I'm all ears and I'll support you.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll bring it up to the department heads probably tomorrow. But I just wanted to, since we were talking about scheduling next year, even though we're not doing it right now, I wanted to at least mention that. So I appreciate it.
And trustees, I'm sorry, Deb.
I would throw out there, one of the reasons I believe Ryan had changed to one 10 a.m. meeting, part of it was the staff. It's a very long day for staff. They work a full day and then they work an additional, depending on how, like the last meeting, it went to almost 10 or after 9. So it is a long day for the staff, but at the same time, we have to work around our day jobs also. So those are just something to consider.
Yep, that's true. And I would add too, I did speak with Administrator King. I wanted to share this with the board. One of the things when I first started, I think it was Michelle, Miss Bonnie. No, not picking on you here, Michelle, at all. But I was seeing dialogue back and forth about minding hours and things like that with our department heads. And I immediately fired off a question to former HR manager about exempt status, because I know with government, exempt can mean different things. As being a federal government employee, I learned that exempt wasn't really exempt. So I just wanted some clarity. My perspective is for these my position, I guess, for board meetings. Yes, it's a part of your job, but it's also part of being in a leadership role to understand that the sacrifice exists. So I did encourage him to work with the department heads in finding a offset that wouldn't create a burden or a constraint on the township, and making sure that he diligently works to ensure there is some offset, because I know the meetings can be painful at times. So I did want to share that with the other two board members, and I'm not sure if there's consensus required or whatever, but I think that's more than fair.
Yeah, no, I think we have to be willing to take a different approach and look at solutions for different things that arise. And as we find. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, but you gotta keep reassessing things, and times change, and sometimes you just gotta look at things and take the necessary steps to continue down the path of success.
And Trustee Rivers, if I can add a little bit more food for thought, just as far as zoning meetings go, the calendars have been approved, but again, we can always revisit them if the trustees decide to change the evening that they prefer for their regular meetings. But zoning commission is typically held twice a week on sometimes twice a week, twice a month on Tuesdays, and then BZA is on Thursdays. And also just to add, the Route 23 hearings, the calendar that the board did approve, I believe at the few meetings ago, that is scheduled for the third Monday of the month. Thank you.
All right, well, I think those are all things that we'll have to consider at our reorg meeting. Does anyone else have anything to add?
So Fiscal Officer Kraft, are you marking that down as a consensus, or do you want to vote on the?
Oh, I already got that meeting as a consensus. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, well, with that, I will make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Taranto,
Yes.